You are standing at the edge of the playground. It is Saturday morning, the air is crisp, and the noise is a dull roar of shouting children and creaking swings. You watch your child. They are standing slightly apart from a group of kids who are negotiating the rules of a game that seems to involve a lot of running and screaming. Your instinct, almost physical in its intensity, is to step in, to guide them, to suggest a line like, "Can I play?" or to find another parent and facilitate an introduction. We feel this pressure in our chests, the fear that if they aren't interacting, they aren't learning. We have come to believe that socialization is a verb, something we do to our children, rather than a biological process that happens within them. But as I watched my own daughter navigate that awkward silence on the edge of the mulch, I started to wonder, is our interference actually helping them connect? Or are we accidentally replacing their social instincts with our own management? There is a profound difference between socializing and socialization, though we often use them interchangeably in our daily lexicon. Socializing is the act of mixing socially with others, parties, playdates, organized sports. It is an event. Socialization, however, is the developmental process of learning the norms, values, and behaviors that allow a person to function within a society. The modern parenting landscape has heavily tilted toward the former, operating under the assumption that maximizing social events will automatically yield high social intelligence. We fill the calendar: soccer on Tuesday, tumbling on Thursday, music class on Saturday morning. We treat social exposure like vitamin D, the more, the better. But when we look closer at the anthropological data, and even just observe the history of childhood, a different picture emerges. For most of human history, children were not socialized by managed schedules of peer-to-peer activities. They were socialized by living alongside adults and figuring out the hierarchy of a multi-age pack. By shifting our focus entirely to structured, peer-only environments, we have inadvertently created a new social experiment, and the results are complicated. Before we begin dissecting the specific architectures of how our children learn to connect, I want to invite you into this headspace with me. We aren't here for quick fixes or scripts to make your child popular. We are here to explore the trade-offs of the decisions we make every day. If you enjoy this kind of slow, non-judgmental deep dive into the why of parenting, consider subscribing to the channel. We are building a quiet corner of the internet for thoughtful parents who are tired of being shouted at and ready to just think. Now, let's look at the first dominant philosophy of our time: the managed schedule. Let's start with the approach most of us fall into by default: the managed schedule. This is the philosophy that views social competence as a skill set acquired through exposure and practice in structured environments. The core belief here is intentionality. We believe that if we place our children in diverse settings, team sports, enrichment classes, scout troops, we are giving them a scaffolded environment where they can learn teamwork, turn-taking, and leadership under the watchful eye of a coach or instructor. It is an approach born of love and a desire for advantage. We want them to be comfortable in groups. We want them to know how to listen to authority other than us. The logic is sound. Structured environments provide clear rules of engagement. In a soccer game, there is a right way and a wrong way to interact. For a child who feels overwhelmed by the chaos of the playground, these guardrails can feel safe. This philosophy prioritizes skill acquisition, learning specific social scripts for specific scenarios. However, the reality of the managed schedule often looks less like a curriculum in social grace and more like a logistical marathon. Picture it. It's 4:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. You are rushing from work or school pickup, handing a granola bar to a child in the back seat who is tired and just wants to decompress. You arrive at the activity, and the socialization is actually quite limited. During a ballet class or karate practice, the children are often told to be quiet and listen. They are standing in lines. They are following instructions. The actual peer-to-peer interaction is relegated to the 3 minutes before class starts and the 5 minutes while putting on shoes afterward. We often congratulate ourselves for socializing them because they were in a room with other kids for an hour. But the quality of that interaction was largely parallel, not interactive. In our living rooms, this reality manifests as exhaustion. The child comes home overstimulated, not from deep connection, but from the effort of compliance. We sacrifice family downtime for the activity, hoping the trade-off pays dividends in their character. Here is the trade-off framing we need to consider. The managed schedule prioritizes structured cooperation at the cost of negotiated friction. When an adult is always present to referee, blowing the whistle when a foul happens, deciding who goes next, enforcing fairness, the child is robbed of the opportunity to solve the social problem themselves. They learn to look to authority for resolution rather than looking to their peer. If a dispute arises in a structured class, the teacher fixes it. The child learns compliance, which is valuable, but they may miss out on the messy, inefficient lesson of conflict resolution. We are trading autonomy for order. We are trading the development of their internal social compass for an external GPS. The hidden cost is that when these children eventually find themselves in an unstructured environment, a college dorm, a workplace dispute, they may feel lost without a moderator to tell them who is right. So, when does this approach actually shine? The managed schedule is often the best fit for children who thrive on predictability and those who have specific, high-drive interests. If your child is deeply passionate about robotics, placing them in a robotics club is a wonderful way for them to find their tribe, socialization based on shared interest rather than just proximity. It is also a useful tool for children who may be neurodivergent or anxious, for whom the chaos of the open playground is terrifying. The structure lowers the social anxiety barrier, allowing them to participate without the constant threat of ambiguity. It works best when used as a specific tool for a specific child, rather than a blanket requirement for a good childhood. I want to pause here and pivot to something counterintuitive. We often fill these schedules because we are terrified of the alternative. The child who says, "I'm bored." We view boredom as a void, a failure of parenting, or a waste of potential learning time. But what if we flipped the lens? What if boredom is actually the prerequisite for the most sophisticated form of socialization? When the entertainment stops and the adult direction vanishes, the child is forced to look outward and say, "Okay, there is nothing to do. We have to invent something." That invention process is where the deep social work happens. This brings us to the second perspective, the free-range or benign neglect approach. This philosophy is rooted in evolutionary biology and the work of researchers like Peter Gray. The core belief is that children are designed to learn through play that is not directed by adults. In this model, the parent provides the safety container, the backyard, the neighborhood, the playroom, and then steps back. The philosophy argues that true socialization requires friction. It requires one child wanting to play house and the other wanting to play spaceship, and the two of them having to mash those ideas together to keep the game going. If they can't agree, the game ends. That threat, the game ending, is the most powerful social teacher in the world. It forces compromise, empathy, and rule-making in a way no lecture from a parent ever could. It prioritizes soft skills like adaptability and reading facial cues over the hard skills of soccer drills. But let's be honest about what this looks like in a modern home on a rainy Sunday. The reality of unstructured play is loud, messy, and often aggressive. Without an adult moderator, the law of the jungle can briefly take over. You will hear screaming. You will hear doors slam. You will hear the accusation, "He's not sharing," echoing down the hallway. For the parent, this approach requires nerves of steel. It is physically uncomfortable to sit on the couch and listen to your children bicker without intervening. The reality is also that modern neighborhoods are often empty. Sending a child outside to go play doesn't work if there are no other children outside. So this often devolves into sibling warfare inside the house, or a child wandering aimlessly, which can feel less like magical childhood and more like isolation. The trade-off here is stark. By prioritizing autonomy and conflict resolution, you are accepting a certain level of emotional risk and chaos. You are trading peace and quiet for social laboratory. The cost is that children will get their feelings hurt. They will experience exclusion. Without a referee, the strong personalities may dominate the quiet ones. The trade-off is that while they are learning resilience, they are doing so without a safety net. There is also the trade-off of perceived negligence. In a culture that values high-achievement parenting, sitting back and letting kids be bored or bicker can look like laziness. You have to be willing to be the parent who doesn't intervene, which can be socially awkward when other parents are hovering nearby, waiting for you to fix the situation. This approach shines brightest in environments where there is a critical mass of children, large families, tight-knit neighborhoods, or cousins who grow up together. It works best for parents who have a high tolerance for noise and a strong philosophical backbone to resist the urge to fix things. It is incredibly beneficial for children who are naturally anxious perfectionists. The low-stakes environment of a made-up game allows them to fail and recover without the pressure of a scoreboard. However, it requires a safe physical environment and, ironically, a very strong emotional connection with the parent, so the child has a secure base to return to when the social experiment goes wrong. We have spent a lot of time talking about how children connect with other children, horizontal socialization. But I want to introduce a concept that has largely vanished from modern parenting: vertical socialization. For centuries, children didn't just play with other 6-year-olds. They spent their days working, cooking, and existing alongside adults and older children. They learned to be adults by watching adults, not by watching other children who were equally clueless. Today, we segregate children by age so strictly that a 10-year-old might have zero idea how to talk to a 40-year-old. We have created a Lord of the Flies dynamic where children only learn social cues from their immature peers. What happens if we reintroduce the vertical line? The philosophy of vertical socialization posits that maturity is caught, not taught. It suggests that children need access to the adult world to understand where they are headed. This isn't about treating children like little adults, but rather about integration. It's the belief that taking a child to the hardware store, having them sit quietly at a dinner party, or helping a grandparent in the garden is a superior form of socialization than a playdate. In this model, the child is an apprentice to society. They observe how you speak to the cashier. They watch how you handle a frustrating phone call. They learn vocabulary and emotional regulation by osmosis from people who have already mastered those skills. The goal here is capability and integration, rather than peer acceptance. The practical application of this, however, can be excruciatingly slow. The reality of vertical socialization is that everything takes twice as long. It means bringing your 5-year-old to the grocery store and letting them pay, while the line builds up behind you. It means having your child at a dinner with friends where they might knock over a water glass or interrupt the conversation. It creates a tension between the efficiency we crave as adults and the patience required for mentorship. It also leads to the bored child in adult spaces, the child under the table at the restaurant, or the one kicking the pew at church. It forces the parent to be a bridge builder constantly, translating the adult world for the child, which is mentally taxing. It is much easier to hand them a tablet or leave them with a sitter than to integrate them into the errand. The trade-off here is a loss of child-centric joy for a gain in maturity. By integrating them into the adult world, we sometimes ask them to suppress their natural energy. We say, shh, a lot. We ask them to sit still. We prioritize their ability to function in our world over their desire to build their own fantasy world. The risk is that if we lean too hard into this, we create parentified children who are serious, anxious to please, and uncomfortable with their own peers. We trade the carefree nature of childhood for early competence. On the flip side, the reward is often a child who can converse with anyone, who is not intimidated by authority, and who possesses a deep sense of belonging to the family unit. This model is the best fit for families who value community and multi-generational connection over specific child-focused achievements. It works beautifully in cultures and homes where extended family is present, where a child can drift from an aunt to a grandpa to a sibling. It is also a powerful approach for single-parent households where the child naturally becomes a co-pilot in the management of life. It shines when the parent is willing to slow down their own life to make room for the apprentice. If you are a parent who enjoys explaining how the world works, this vertical integration can be deeply satisfying. There is one final, critical lens we must apply to all of this. Everything we have discussed so far assumes a neurotypical response to social stimuli. That exposure leads to adaptation. But for a significant number of children, those with ADHD, autism, sensory processing differences, or simply deep introversion, socialization is not a battery that gets charged by interaction. It is a battery that gets drained. Conventional wisdom says to push them out of their comfort zone. But what if, for these children, the comfort zone is the only place where actual growth can happen? The Temperament-First philosophy argues that socialization must be customized to the nervous system of the child. It rejects the idea that more is better. Instead, it posits that social safety is the prerequisite for social learning. If a child is in a state of sensory overwhelm or high anxiety, they are in survival mode, not learning mode. Therefore, the most social thing a parent can do is sometimes to protect the child from social situations. This approach values quality over quantity. It suggests that one good friend and a lot of alone time is a perfectly valid, healthy developmental path. It redefines a successful childhood not by the number of birthday parties attended, but by the child's internal sense of peace. In the living room, this looks like saying no a lot. It means declining the invite to the class party because you know it will end in a meltdown. It means leaving the playground after 20 minutes because you see the subtle signs of overstimulation in your child's eyes. The reality is often isolating for the parents. While other parents are chatting by the swings, you might be sitting in the car with a child who needs silence. It involves a lot of advocacy, explaining to grandparents why you aren't hugging, or telling a teacher why your child eats lunch alone. It is a protective, often lonely stance that requires you to ignore the judgment of a world that equates loudness with happiness. The trade-off is the tension between accommodation and growth. If we protect the child from every uncomfortable social sensation, do we rob them of the chance to build a callus? Are we enabling avoidance, or are we respecting a boundary? It is a razor-thin line. The cost of this approach can be a shrinking world. If we always opt out, the child's window of tolerance may narrow rather than expand. However, the trade-off of ignoring their temperament is often trauma. A child who learns to mask their true self to please others, leading to burnout later in life. We are trading the appearance of normalcy for the preservation of the child's authentic self. This approach is essential, not just a best fit, but essential for deeply sensitive, introverted, or neurodivergent children. For them, the managed schedule is a prison, and the free-range approach is a minefield. This approach works when parents are attuned enough to read the micro-signals of their child's stress. It shines when the goal is long-term mental health rather than short-term social conformity. It creates a child who knows their own limits and isn't afraid to enforce them, a skill many adults are still trying to learn. So, where does this leave us? We have the calendar manager, the free-range observer, the vertical mentor, and the temperament protector. The truth, as it so often is, lies in the synthesis. Perhaps the healthiest approach is not to pick a camp, but to recognize that our children need different things in different seasons. Maybe your child needs the managed schedule for sports to burn off energy, but needs a vertical approach on weekends to learn how to be a person. Maybe they need free-range chaos in the summer, but a temperament-first protection during a stressful school year. We get into trouble when we dogmatically adhere to one philosophy, ignoring the data right in front of us, the child's behavior. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought that has helped me navigate this. When we worry about socialization, we are usually worrying about the future. Will they have friends? Will they get married? Will they be lonely? But socialization is happening right now, in the way you look at them when they walk into the room. It's in the way you apologize when you lose your temper. The most profound social lesson they will ever learn is how they are treated by the people who love them most. If that foundation is solid, the rest, the soccer teams, the playground squabbles, the awkward dinners, are just details. I'm curious to know which of these 4 perspectives resonates most with your current reality. Are you in a season of heavy management? Or are you trying to lean into the free-range chaos? Or perhaps you're navigating the complexities of a sensitive child. Let me know in the comments, not to debate who is right, but to see the variety of ways we are all trying to solve the same puzzle. If this exploration was helpful, you know where the buttons are. Until next time, take a breath. You're doing better than you think.